Good evening, all of you, and a very, very warm welcome from Team Umang. So once again, we meet for Umang session. So Umang is now almost 1 year old. As you are all aware, and you have been attending Umang sessions regularly. For those who have joined for the first time, Umang is an initiative we started about a year back. It was started by like-minded doctors with an intention of expanding our learning horizon beyond just learning medicine. And we have been doing various topics every month. On last Saturday, we meet and we are focused on learning many life related topics and focus on self growth in various dimensions like physical, mental, emotional, even financial and spiritual dimension. And so far, we've been getting excellent response from all of you. And thank you for joining for today's session. Today, we've chosen one such topic which is close to all our hearts and our guts, and that topic is on food and nutrition. And as we all know, our life really is so closely linked. Anything that we enjoy in life is so closely linked with our food and our passions, our cultural conditioning, our social emotional conditioning. A lot of things are woven around food and nutrition. And as medicos, we all know about what is good for our bodies, what food is good, and we direct and guide so many people on this subject, on this aspect. But when it comes to our own food and nutrition planning, we somehow are not able to translate this knowledge that we have into our own life. And that's a real challenge. So knowing and having an information does not necessarily bring about the transformation. It's only when your knowledge, your understanding is aligned with the right action, then you get the result that you desire. So today we have none other than Dr. Nitin Patankar to guide us on this topic. He really doesn't need any introduction. Dr. Nitin Patankar has been practicing as a bariatric physician and diabetologist for more than 3 decades now. And he's director of his center, that is Wisdom Clinic. See, the name is also so insightful. And see, managing obesity or managing your food and nutrition goes much beyond the physical or the gross aspect, and it requires a lot of wisdom for sure. And you need to have a very, very different and holistic and spiritual approach towards this. And today he's precisely going to discuss about this. And just to give you a little bit of introduction about Dr. Nitin Patankar, I'm trying to make it as concise as possible. Otherwise, I think 10-15 minutes would go in just introducing him. He has done his MD and MBBS from Mumbai, and then he has trained himself in John Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore and Duke's University, USA. He is World Obesity Certified Bariatric Physician and Diabetologist. He has been practicing as a bariatric physician in Jupiter Hospital, Thane and Pune. And he has his own center in Mulund, which is called Wisdom Clinic. And he's been very much passionate about training for the doctors especially. And so far he has conducted about more than 500 training programs for doctors on nutrition, obesity, and diabetes. And he's also pioneered a program in India about reversal of lifestyle diseases. And I really have a lot of respect for this. There are very few doctors who've been focusing on the preventive aspect of medicine, and he is one such doctor. And he runs a YouTube channel called Health and Wisdom, and he does a lot of patient awareness program via TV shows, writing articles in Marathi as well as English in newspaper, and also doing Facebook Lives. And he has got excellent command over English as well as in Marathi. Many of us have read his articles. And he is also presented various research papers in national as well as international conferences. And he's written a textbook of endocrinology for PG students. And he has written a chapter on obesity and nutrition in RSSBI a book on diabetes. Okay. And another very interesting aspect of Dr. Nitin Patnagar, he has been working for past few years on sound, music, and yoga, and he's been working on a very interesting subject of how chakra healing can help in nutrition, or how it can improve your compliance with diet and nutrition. And so today is going to focus on how you can set smart goals in life and how you can implement the knowledge that you have for your own self. Over to you, Nitin. People are eagerly waiting to listen to you.
So at the outset, let me thank Dr. Alpa for this wonderful introduction. And when we know each other for so long, and when you hear such introduction from such close friend, we start looking at ourselves in a very different fashion. And I know all the participants are very well versed with all the lifestyle disorders. They are so much interested into something more than medicine. So it's my honor and privilege to present. And last 10 sessions I have gone through. So there were stalwarts, and the topic selection was fantastic. The speakers were extremely good. So with little bit of tension, I'm going to start sharing my presentation. So when Dr. Gauri and Alpa told me about this mind-body nutrition and passion or fashion, so at least the first tick mark was made. That the topic, the names of the topics, or the titles were very catchy. So it fits into that. So let us see whether I will be able to take this tempo forward. So there are two parts of lifestyle nutrition planning. One is a medical part and one is dietetic part when it comes to nutrition. So there is, I call it science of nutrition and art of nutrition. In science of nutrition, it's a question of deciding quantity and quality of the macro and micronutrients. So we know that there are protein, calories, fats, carbohydrates, fiber, vitamins and minerals, and water. And at least when I was doing my MBBS, the nutrition topic was for 4 marks out of 200 marks in medicine paper. So I remember still the diet planning, it was something like a balance sheet. So on one side you have these proteins, and one side we know that calories and something, and the values will never match. So since those days we have now computer programs and so many things, but still it's a very, very confusing aspect of how to scientifically plan a diet. So I'm just going to try to discuss this. So let us take this patient. He's Pushkar, 40-year-old male. Height is 5 feet 7 inches. Weight is 100 kg. His waist circumference is 96 centimeters. And I will stress again and again, because the most important part of any measurement is not only vitals for the patient when we are thinking of nutrition and diabetes planning, it's waist circumference. Because waist circumference is the determinant of metabolic rate. And as we know that once the person starts dieting or exercising or combination of anything, taking medicines and tries to lose weight, this all triggers a downfall of metabolic rate. And that's why the weight comes to a plateau and the metabolic rate decline remains for a very long time. And then you eat something small quantities, you start gaining weight, you become frustrated and you regain weight. So weight goes into yo-yo cycle because we focus on numbers of weight, height, calories and everything. But usually the most important factor, that is waist circumference, is not taken into consideration. So that's why this is kept after weight. Then his BMI is calculation 34.6 and his final target weight. When I say final target weight, is BMI of 23.9. And why these odd figures have come up? Because beyond 23.9, that is from 24 BMI, the person can develop all sorts of metabolic challenges and metabolic changes in the body. So that's why, though we say ideal weight, the BMI is 23 or 18 to 23, 23.9 is taken as the final target for that patient. So for this patient, that is Pushkar, it is 69 kg, but always we take first target at just 5% less than present. And it is known that for anybody, whether with any lifestyle condition, like whether it is blood pressure, diabetes, or plain simple obesity, the 5% weight loss can give rise to or can give the person around 60% benefits. 10% weight loss can give around 86% of health benefits. So even somebody loses 10% weight and maintains it, he gets 86% of benefit. So our first target is 5% less weight, that is around 95 kg. So diet planning should always start with planning proteins. So as Dr. Alpa had told me in the beginning that this session should be interactive session. So I don't have any means to know inputs, but the first question is, how much proteins should be given to that patient for any patient when you are planning a diet? So any guesses you can give me in a chat. So how to plan the diet? So it is basically, it was always said that you have to give 1 gram per kilogram of body weight of proteins. Now the question comes, 1 gram per kilogram, that per kilogram is which kilograms? Whether it is present weight, whether it is final target or ideal weight, whether it is 5% less weight, what we should be doing. So the standard practice, and as I said, it is for managing waist circumference, keep a lowest target, and we will see why we say this. So first target weight is 95, and protein is always calculated as 0.8 gram per kilogram of 5% less target weight. That is 95. So initial protein intake should be 76 grams per day. And final protein intake at 23.5 BMI, and that is 1 gram per kilogram body weight. So this distinction has to be noted, because if you give 1 gram per kilogram body weight of proteins at present weight, there will be very high quantity of protein that is going inside, and any kind of excess protein which cannot be incorporated into muscles, and which is a difficult thing, that will be converted to fat. So by eating excess proteins, we get extra fat in the body, and the nitrogen component which is leached from the protein, it causes an extra load on kidneys. So excessive protein intake is not good. So that's why we calculate what is the 5% less weight, multiply by 0.8, and that is the protein target. Then second step is always by planning or judging what should be the waist circumference of that person. So there are a lot of algorithms are available now. So we use one where the DEXA matched RE, that is the resting energy expenditure, is calculated from weight, waist circumference. And for this person, so look at this present weight, target weight, and if. So if the weight comes from 100 to 95, waist comes from 96 to 90.5, but if it remains only 94, because that is a usual case that we see, that person loses 5% weight, but the waist circumference comes from usually hardly 1 or 2 centimeters down. The fat-free mass goes from 59.4 to 58.5, that is okay. But look at the drop in resting energy expenditure. If the present weight is 100 and resting energy expenditure is 1678, and if you lose just 2 centimeters of waist rather than 5 centimeters, then your resting metabolic rate drops down to 1600. That is 78 calories are burnt lesser. And 1 cup of tea will give rise to around 60 calories. So 1 cup of tea and 2 Marie biscuits will just offset everything. And you can start gaining weight, and then people come to us and say, डॉक्टर मैंने तो सब कुछ फॉलो किया आपने बोला वैसा, फिर भी मेरा वजन बढ़ना चालू हो गया या वजन कम नहीं होता है. So this is the reason. That's why you have to focus on waist. Again, so this is what we want. So present weight is 100. If target weight is 85, and the waist circumference should come down from 96 to 85. And then only you will see that the resting energy expenditure remains same. If the person loses 15 kg weight and waist circumference just remains 90, his resting energy expenditure is only 1503. That is around 200 calories less. So 200 calories less is one nashta or one small meal. So either you have to omit one meal totally, or you have to plan your waist circumference, because exercise is not the answer for this. Even if you do exercise to burn 300 extra calories, that will offset the metabolic rate. Body tries to compensate by lowering it further. So exercise is not the answer. And that's why there are a lot of articles which are present that exercise is not the solution for weight loss. So the third step in diet planning is calculating non-protein calories, because again, this is a very important step, because many times what happens is we calculate protein correctly, though we forget waste. Then we say ad lib intake of carbohydrates, or 55 to 60% carbohydrates, 30% fat, but that is not true. So usually the things that are calculated in critical care, that is around a nitrogen to non-protein calorie ratio of around 120 to 130 is applicable even in obesity, diabetes, and all other weight loss conditions. So accordingly, we plan the protein intake. So initial protein intake is 76 grams, that is 304 calories. Resting energy expenditure is 1678, and we want to keep at that level. So non-protein calories come to 1374. And then you can have a division between fiber, fat, what kind of a fat you are going to take. So this is how we plan. Then the quantity of the carbohydrates, quantity of the fat, quality of the fat, whether you want to add MUFA, whether you want to add PUFA, what quality of PUFA, whether it is DHA, EPA, or lower or the short chain omega-3 fatty acids. It all depends on calculating what is the level of insulin resistance, what is the level of fatty liver, how much inflammation is present in the body, what is the glucose variability, what is the lipid profile, what is the levels of calcium and uric acid, and are there any gastrointestinal problems with present medications that patient is taking. Because depending on that, we have to calculate how much fat and carbohydrates we can give. Because if we give excess fiber and patient is already on metformin and voglibose, they may be able to, or they may not be able to excrete that, and they get diarrhea, bloating of abdomen, or start feeling nauseous. So the non-protein calories are also to be calculated according to presence of various conditions. So how a typical medical nutrition prescription looks like. So a protein requirement 30 grams in the morning, 8 grams of olive oil and 10 grams of flaxseed oil, not more than 40 grams of fructose, mixed carbohydrates, and diabetic, non-hypertensive carbohydrate and fat. So this is how we plan medical nutrition, and this is given to a dietitian. And then the role of a dietitian begins. Before that, I want to touch upon how a medical exercise prescription looks like. So there is something called as a high intensity interval training, which is not possible for many patients. So there is something called as a fat burning zone, or 70% of maximum heart rate. So the patient should be working out at 126 heart rate. This is a average heart rate at which the person can burn fat. If possible, then 30 seconds of high intensity interval training at 160 heart rate with 2 minutes gap. Then total steps. This can be calculated depending on the stride length, which can be calculated by patient's height. So how much steps patient should be taking in 30 minutes. And luckily we have all the gadgets of pulse monitoring, step monitoring, calorie calculations. So a person has to burn around 200 to 300 calories in 3 different sets. And waist should come down to 94, where we have to take help of a physiotherapist, because that waist circumference, if you send a person to a non-trained person, they will work out so much on rectus abdominis that the transverse abdominis and obliques will become flat, and the person's waist circumference will increase, or there will be a problem to the patient's spine. So better trained dietitian, trained physiotherapist will plan the exercise and nutrition. Then the role of a dietitian who converts the nutrition numbers into variety of diets. So that's why I call it the art of nutrition, because patients have so many, like Alpa mentioned, there is a lot of cultural issues, a lot of likes and dislikes. Then what is in fashion? Then there are so many kinds of timings are available. Some people want to eat 2 times a day. Some people want to do intermittent fasting, 5-2 diets. So the dietitian looks at the patient's capacity, patient likes and dislikes, the culture, the family background, and affordability. And then she can convert those protein, carbohydrate, fat numbers into meaningful diets with limited varieties. And so patient can follow it for a longer time. So this is how a dietitian works. Now the dietitian has to take all these things into account. How to manage the taste, because you may be giving them the best of the like nutrients, but the patient has certain ideas about how it should taste. Then texture. So somebody who may not like the pulpy texture of, say, salads or smoothies. Then aroma, mouthfeel, cultural alignment, and mental image associations are extremely important in planning diets. So what are the tricks we use? So this is something called as a SCAMPER in nutrition. SCAMPER means it's an acronym or a mnemonic. S is substitute. So how much or how many things you can substitute? Like very commonly known thing is using sucralose, using stevia for sugar. Similarly, you can substitute so many things. Like for example, there is something called the cauliflower rice, which is available. You can use black rice, brown rice, then the parboiled rice. So you can substitute. Then you can combine the things together, because there is something called the glycemic index and glycemic load. So glycemic index is also important, how fast the sugar goes inside the body. So you can combine something like a fat, fiber, and carbohydrate, and you can reduce the glycemic, say, load, glycemic index, and at the same time increase satiety. Then you have to adapt to the diets, because many times the mouthfeel, which is important, we have to adapt to new things. Then we have to modify, because this is the most important step. The patient has to accept that I have to change something. Then put to another use. So as I said, the cauliflower is used as rice. Then sometimes the fibers like inulin and fructose or fructooligosaccharides, they are used as sugars. Then eliminate so many things, and that is like people always curse the nutritionist for eliminating so many things that they like. And sometimes you have to reverse the diet. When I mean reverse, it's not the reversal of disease, but typically, say 2 generations back, whatever food was eaten by the local community was best suited for that community or living in that environmental conditions. So you have to reverse your dietary habits. This is typically true for people who are hooked to like internet, or they are global in their nutritional choices. They may have to reverse. So this all things dietitian has to sit and talk with the patient. Then I am going to talk about something about mind and lifestyle in the aspect of nutrition. So I always call it what we aim as doctors or as patients, that we want something called the CPR of Big Four. What is CPR? CPR is control, prevent, and reverse. One of my teachers used to say that a doctor's job is always control the disease. Then, but this can happen, say 80% of the times, but 100% of the times, the patient should feel comfortable with you, and cure is very rare. So that C stands for control, comfort, and cure. Then we can prevent the disease. Again, this is where medical community, as I feel, may be falling short in eyes of patients, because we want to treat the disease, but like Alpa does, there are so many other doctors are doing that, we try to prevent the diseases also. And now this is a new trend that we try to reverse the disease also. Here I want to make one thing clear, because sometimes people ask that tight dietary control and good exercises or good lifestyle control can bring your HbA1c back to 5, 5.7, 5.6, and your sugars remain normal, blood pressure remains normal, then what is the difference between a tight control and a reversal? So the reversal of the disease is when you put a challenge like a glucose tolerance test and it remains normal, then that is a reversal. So we always aim for CPR of big four. They are diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and obesity. So we have to make lifestyle changes. And these are the four things that are there: the intentions, the resolutions, the mission, and the goals. So we have to first clarify our intentions, because without intentions, nothing can happen. Only intentions won't work, but without having a clear-cut intentions, we will never start journey towards our goals. Then there are resolutions. There are do's and don'ts. Good, they are good starting point, but they are very short lasting. So let me ask again, how many people have made a resolution in Diwali? How many people have made a resolution in, say, 31st December 2020? And how long it lasted? Can anybody answer that? Okay, I don't see the result. Maybe later on we can have question answer sessions or something. So, but usually the resolutions do not last long, and I will give you the reasons or the tricks how they can last long. So we have to decide the health targets or goals. So how the goals are decided? So first of all, the goals cannot be numbers. Goals cannot be copied from somebody else. So goals should be aligned with your values that you want to draw from life. So again, this is a question commonly I ask in all my lectures, that what is the value of your life? For yourself, what is the value of your life? It's not the insurance value, definitely. You may have an insurance of 1 crore, life insurance of 1 crore, but is it a value of your life? Or I can add it that what is the value of quality of your life? Because unless those values are very clear in your mind, we cannot write them down. Because once we cannot write them down, it becomes difficult to remember them and follow them. Secondly, we have to have a passion for quality of life, because there are so many times people crack jokes that when you go to Chitragupta or that some Saint Peter, he will ask you that I have given you an excellent body to use on the earth, and you have not used it, you have brought it as it is. What is the use of it? So whether you want to use the body, make it dirty, make it tired, and then go to St. Peter, or you want to go with a healthy body. So quality of life is again a question of value and passion. It's not knowledge. So unless we have that value assigned to our quality of life and we develop the passion for it, we will never progress. And secondly, we should know how many things are under our control and how many things are not under our control. There is one doctor in Jupiter who came to OPD, and he asked me that, okay, I want to know how you progress for weight loss and diabetes control. I am pre-diabetic. So when I started telling him that, he said that no, this is not possible, because there is no control over food. I cannot talk anything in my house. Anything that can be bought from outside, it's okay with me, but nothing I can change. Nothing I can change in Jupiter canteen. So he said, I don't have any control. So unless we have assigned a value, we will never see the controls or the switches that we have with us. So that's why the goals have to be written. So can we do a quick exercise regarding your, say, weight? Can you write down the goals quickly? Not on the screen, but write down with any paper in front of you. And there's a most important thing, that the goals have to be visible. The goals have to be always in front of your eyes so that you can actually act on them. So the second thing that we can do is that this is a very powerful technique. This is something called as the feedback from the future. Imagine yourself that today we are sitting on 27th November 2021. Imagine you meet a person that is yourself in 27th November 2022, and how the dialogue will go. The future person will ask you that, okay, you attended that lecture on 27/11 at 5 p.m. Excellent lectures arranged by Gauri and Alpa, and there you talked about something, setting up goals. And so you had 1 year in your hand, and what you have done. So how you would like to answer the person from future? So usually what happens, if you do this exercise seriously, the most of the times we feel the pain that I should have done these things. That was possible, but I have not done it. And usually we go into a denial mode. We keep it under carpet and we never address these issues. So feel the pain of a future you and then act today. Because I will tell you a secret. The goal is a point or a small spectrum in the trajectory of the changes. And in your calendar, suppose you write down a goal that your weight, your health, your fitness will be such and such in 27/11/2022, then you have to make space and time for all days. Like we write a birthday, that Alpa's birthday is on 1st April. And then you tick mark that, and then the computer asks you that whether it will repeat every day, every week, every month, every year. And then I make a tick mark that, oh, it repeats every year. So similarly, we have to make time and space in our calendar for our goals. And goals are nothing but the number of repetitions of the behavior that we carry till the due date. So unless we make those like written affirmations for ourselves, that, okay, this is the behavior I'm going to change, or I'm going to follow the piece of behavioral every day, every week till say next year, then it will be really useful. Otherwise, it always remains in only dreams. Then self-doubt is always a non-starter. I am sure at least few of you must have thought, ये सब बोलने के लिए बहुत अच्छा है, मगर ऐसा होता नहीं है. सब करते हैं हम लोग, मगर होता नहीं है कुछ भी. So if you have a self-doubt, again, I will go back to that same thing, that what is the value you want to draw out of your own resolutions, your own goals, and then do you have a passion for it? Then if these two things are present, then self-doubt is a non-starter. Because if you doubt it, you will be like cracking it in the beginning. So there is another concept. I have developed this concept called a goal hygiene. Because a few years back, I heard a lecture by Dr. Prajakta about sleep hygiene. So then I was thinking about my patients and what is goal hygiene basically. So write your goals and keep them visible and never be shy of your goals. Because many times we think that I will lose 10 kg weight and then I will tell patients, or tell not patients, friends or relatives or someone, if they ask me what you have done, then I will tell them, okay, I have done it. But I will always keep a back door open that if it doesn't happen, I'm not told anyone. I've not written down anyone. So Jaisa, nowadays those scams, so many scams are going on and people say, where is the proof? So there is no proof. So write your goals, keep them visible, not only to you, but maybe for others also. So this is the first thing in goal hygiene. Then share with supportive people. Human beings always require support, a group. So you have to have people who are like-minded, people who share your passion, share your goals, and you share your goals with them. But another thing is the avoid distractions and distractors, because they will be dime a dozen and they will always take you away. Because वो होता है ना कि उसकी कमीज मेरे कमीज से ज्यादा सफेद क्यों. So instead of improving my detergent, what I will do is I will just stain your clothes so that our both हमारी दोनों की चादर वैसे ही मैली हो जाती है. So avoid distractions and distractors. Then never joke about your own goals. You treat goals with the respect, because we have got a tendency to joke. मैंने decide तो किया है मगर I don't think it will happen. और क्या खाने का नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है, हवा खाते तो भी हम लोग वजन बढ़ता है, और सामने आ गया तो कुछ तो होता है. All these kinds of jokes will always, it is like telling yourself that do it. So never joke about your goals. Be serious. Treat goals with respect. The respect will come back to you. Then keep internal cues stronger than external cues. There are so many external cues. We live in a obesogenic environment, that they say. We live in a stressful environment. But again, what you want, those internal cues, if they remain stronger than external cues, then the things will happen. So what are the goals? Like, this is a very common thing, SMART goals. So they are simple and short term, but I don't mean that it should be a simple short term goals, but make a chain of it. And I will talk about that chain. So make a chain of it so that a larger goal is achieved. Then it should be measurable. It should not be very abstract. I am going to behave in such a fashion that मेरे आजू बाजू में सब लोगों को थोड़ी सी तो खुशी मिले. No, this is not a goal. You have to be measurable. Then it should be attainable. It should not be an impossible goal. कि कल मुझे मेरा गोल है कि अगले साल तक मुझे भगवान दिखना चाहिए. तो ऐसे गोल नहीं होने चाहिए. Then it should be reproducible. So you should be able to do it again and again. And they should be tangible and time bound, because there should be some time limit. So it's like people who come to our office where they have to key in their time in, key in their time out. Similarly, your goal should be tangible and time bound. Then when I say short term and reproducible, because we have to create a habit of following certain behaviors without thinking so that it can take me to the goal. And I can create a chain like this. And that's why it should be reproducible. It is always possible, or it is always probable that you may break the chain. That is very common. Something happens and you break the chain. But as this is a common dictum that never miss it twice. That if you miss once, then the problem is not missing once. It is because you feel frustrated that you have missed once, you keep it missing again and again, and that is a problem. So never miss it twice. So that is the importance of chain, short term and reproducible. Then challenge your age, that is attainability. Because many times it happens that we usually underestimate our capacity. And that's why we keep goals so small that once we attain, we become complacent. So always challenge your age. So though the goals may be simple and measurable, the attainability keeps on increasing. So what I usually say is that you should always remain within limits, but keep on expanding your limits from within. That is what is required for your goals. So I will end with, there is a saying in Gita, Adhishthanam tatha karta, karanam cha prathak vidham, vividhascha prathak cheshta, daivam chaivatra panchamam. It says that Adhishthan means you have intention, because without intentions, anything that is done is not useful. Then there should be someone to do it, that is karta, that is you. You have to do it. Then karanam cha prathak vidham. What is karanam? That you should have some control over some things. If you don't have control over some things, try to attain the control over. And then vividhascha prathak cheshta means a different kinds of experimentation has to be done. Normally it is said that you should have a plan. Here I want to talk something about evidence-based medicine. We collect so much data, but data is not exactly is prediction of future. Data is already what has happened. That doesn't mean that it is going to happen again, same things. So depending on the data that we have to have a theory, and there can be multiple hypotheses and a theory, and the theory which is based on logic, based on data, you try to extend the theory for future, and spend your 80% of your efforts, money, time on that 80%, and 20% the alternative theories or alternative hypothesis. Sometimes it happens that the alternative hypothesis clicks when it main. So that is called as Vividhano Prathak Cheshta and Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam. That is luck factor, which is the fifth thing that is important. Again, I would like to reiterate, whenever I talk about stress management and Gita, people say that Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam means unless you have got luck on your side, you are not going to get successful. But if you read Gita carefully, what Bhagavan Krishna says is, first there should be intention, then you should start doing it. You should attain control over so many things, make multiple attempts, multiple theories, and the luck will decide in which attempt you will be successful. It doesn't say, it is not all or none, that whether you will be successful or not, you will be successful, but the luck will decide whether it is the first experiment or the 10th experiment. But you have to keep on doing those Vividhascha Prathak Cheshta. So let that control, prevention and reversal be your passion, and your success can make it into a fashion. Again, I will thank Dr. Alpa and Dr. Gauri for giving me this opportunity to talk on this topic and some allied things. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitin. That was a fantastic talk, very, very insightful. And so having, I mean, on the same line that you said on Gita, so it is said in our scripture that if you want to achieve something in life, you need three energies. The first energy is the energy of intention. The second energy is the energy of knowledge. And the third energy is the energy of action. And most of the time, I would say in intellectuals, the second energy is very strong, that is the energy of the knowledge. But the first energy, that is of strong intention, and the weakest link is the energy of implementation. And I think with your talk today, given us a lot of insights so that we start working on all the three energies and open a spiral and start opening a small spiral every time to be able to attain the goal. And so I think it is open for questions now. So you all can ask a question. If you want to unmute yourself and ask personally, you can ask. You want to put the questions on the chat box, you can ask. And some people have already put some questions. So okay, so there has been one question which 2-3 people have asked, Nitin, and that is, what is a vegetarian source of protein? And consuming soya regularly, how good that is, and what are the best oils to be used? So that's a question.
So first of all, let me debunk the concept of first-class proteins. So it is not scientifically proven that egg protein or some non-vegetarian protein is the concept of first-class protein is a humbug thing, because any protein you take, whether it is from any source, it is not absorbed as it is. So it is basically broken down into peptides, amino acids, and then they are absorbed and they are rearranged in our body in the form of our own proteins. So even if you eat chicken, you don't have a chicken protein. So you have a human protein or your own protein. So whether the proteins are coming from chicken or soybean or dal or rice or vegetables or rajgira, milk, all proteins are same. So the proteins which are ingested can have allergic reaction. That is a different thing, because the proteins are the things which can trigger allergy. But apart from that, you can have a combination of dal, milk and cereal, and you can have a good quantity of protein. Now problem is that the vegetarian source of protein comes with the package deal of lots of carbohydrates. but human beings are supposed to be working throughout the day. So your small movements, instead of small frequent meals, we are supposed to move multiple times in a day. So that's why it is said that daily your step count should be around 10 to 12,000. And that can burn enough amount of carbohydrates that you consume with any quantity of vegetarian protein. So even by combining, that is because of the lysine, methionine, and all those combinations are there, limiting proteins are there. So you can even eat chawal, dal, and dahi, and you can get good proteins. If you want a concentrated protein, then you can have again paneer or a soybean protein. So that proteins are available. Then nowadays, there is nothing wrong in having isolated proteins. There are isolated whey proteins, isolated pea proteins. So vegetarian source of protein concentrates are available. So we can take that also. Second question of soybean, because soybean contains some substances like estrogens, there is a lot of controversy goes on about eating soybean. But all those basically structural proteins are destroyed by or the structures, because the tertiary and quaternary structures of proteins, which are basically are active structures, once you heat it to around 180 degrees centigrade for around 10 minutes, they are destroyed. So the custom of roasting soybean into the microwave or sand and then eating it is safe. I don't know about exactly how they make soya isolates, because those are the soya proteins which are available, which are not heated to that quantity. So people who have got thyroid problems or a family history of breast cancer or uterine cancer, anything that is related to estrogen, they should avoid soybean as far as possible. And question of oils, basically all oils are good, but if you want to have a correct ratios of say omega-3 to omega-6, I will make one point here, that there are a lot of people are under the impression that you require only EPA and DHA. They are the brain development and vascular protectors. So fish oils, there is paryay nahi hai fish oil ko. And then people have gone ahead and sourced these long chain fatty acids from algae, and they call it vegetarian source of proteins. So we require EPA and DHA, but our body can generate that, which is we don't burn fat all the time, or we don't use EPA and DHA as a fuel. So if you keep on accumulating it, say maybe from flaxseed oil, you convert 5% of it. Over the years, we can have enough quantity of EPA and DHA. But the point I want to make is, it's not only the long chain fatty acids that are important, even the short chain fatty acids, that is omega-3 fatty acid, that is ALNA, alpha linolenic acid, which is also important, because the ratio of ALNA to ALA in our oils is skewed. And what happens is, if you have enough flaxseed oil, it can prevent the omega-6 fatty acids from getting converted to arachidonic acid, and the inflammation is prevented. So we have to have a short chain fatty acids also. And today's that big four I've talked about, the major cause is inflammation. And so we should have these kind of oils. So I recommend 1 to 2 teaspoons of olive oil, 1 to 2 teaspoonfuls of flaxseed oil in a day, and 2 teaspoonfuls of ghee, that is liquid ghee. And then you can use any quantity of any oil that of your liking, either it is mustard oil, singdana oil, or curdy oil, or whatever oil you are using. So the best thing according to Ayurveda is til oil. So if I at my home use til oil for cooking, and I use ghee, olive oil, and flaxseed oil as add-ons to my vegetables or salads. So that completes the fatty acid content in the diet.
One question, Nitin. Have you ever been overweight in your life, and did you try any of these things for yourself? Or
Yeah.
somebody very close to you, you tried this. So we get a practical example of how you tried
I
the
was
thing.
88 kg.
Okay.
When I joined Jupiter, I was 88 kg, and I tried it, and today I am 75.
Okay.
And I'm maintaining it. Last few years, I am maintaining it. and not exactly 75, maybe goes up to 77, but comes back to 76, 75. But, and the people who know me, they know that I don't abstain from alcohol. I don't smoke, but I eat everything. But at home, as my staple diet, my diet is very limited. And few days in a week, I always eat only proteins and salads and no carbs. So they are like my fasting days.
So initially, did you have a challenge like what we are saying of setting up a goal or
Yeah, that's why I read these books, and then I said that it is ये पेट पानी का सवाल है तो कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा. And that's why I went into reading all these things, and from where I have gathered all these information.
I mean, so that's the main thing, because a lot of us, we want to lose weight and always find it so challenging. I mean, not me, but others, so we find it so challenging that we do it for some time and then we give up, and we are just not able to, you go around the circle. And so, and we try to probably, try to get the knowledge about what calories and what things, and a lot of things about what proteins and what fatty acids and what carbohydrate. But the main thing where most of us fail is achieving it in a sustainable manner. So that is where I think,
I can add a comment on this, because many times we don't see the benefits of it. See, I imagine dieting as a form of a swimming or doing any exercise. So I go to gym, my pulse rate goes to certain level, I sweat a lot, I feel nice, but then I weigh myself in the evening, I am same. In fact, I am getting body aches. So it is not really like pleasant. So dieting is the same thing. I do diet for 1 week, and then my expectations are I should be losing 2 kg. So I lose 2 kg in first week, but second week it doesn't happen. So that marshmallow experiment, which is a very famous experiment, the delayed gratification is required. And it can happen only when you gain some value out of your experiments. So I always believe that, as you said rightly, that intentions are weaker, knowledge is tremendous, but knowledge is explanatory rather than executive. And that's why everybody can give a good lecture, because they have attained so much knowledge. But when it comes to execution, it's a failure. And secondly, the company that we keep. Because many times I feel that I will be an odd man out if I don't make certain choices. And that's why when I have to put my foot down and make a choice, I feel pressurized by peers. So I said that if you can't tolerate that pressure, then you change your peers till you attain your goals. So that's why the Ashram Sanstha works very well. You go to Urali Kanchan, you lose weight. You go to Jindal, you lose weight, because you are changing environment and support staff and the peers. Your friends are left back. So if you can't change your mind, you change your friends.
That's very important.
And I think the group, like you are running this group like Umang, and you would run that yoga group. So if that is another trick, that every day it's like if you attend a certain group where people are going to like reiterate their goals. So it's like making a habit. So even if I've got that binding that I have to go this group and say, so that's why even Alcoholic Anonymous and Weight Watchers work. But that commitment has to come. But the problem is that we have only knowledge.
So I think all the people who are attending today itself, before you forget this, you must write down your goals, and you make a yearly goal, then break it up into monthly goals, and then weekly goals, and then daily goals, and then start working on the daily goals. I think before this knowledge evaporates or it dilutes, I think today itself, if we make a goal and start working on it, so that is the best thing. I think whenever you attend something like this, you get so so motivated. Before the other things come and the motivation goes away, it's better to just write down and commit yourself. So are there
So
any?
if there are no questions, we will stop.
No, I think there's one question. If a person within normal body weight, according to BMI, has dyslipidemia, then what are the suggestions for lipid intake? The question is by Dr. Namrata.
Yeah. So
Hello.
basically, hello. See, there is, first of all, we have to check whether that the body weight and the BMI match the fat percent. Because there is a very common thing is called as the thin fat Indians, or they are called as toffees, the thin out fat in. So first of all, we have to rule that out. So first check your waist circumference. So you may be bony thin, but if your waist circumference is high, that is the visceral fat is high, and which can cause dyslipidemia. Because the fat that is accumulated in lower abdomen can really have an impact on your portal circulation, and it can stimulate the liver enzymes. So that is first thing. Secondly, even a normal person with a normal fat weight, if there is some reason why the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors or not inhibitors, reductase, they are activated because of some reason. It may be inflammation, it may be stress. So then your cholesterol levels go high and you can land in dyslipidemia. And that's why it is not related to food. It is not related to activity, but it is basically an enzyme problem. But triglycerides are usually linked to insulin resistance and body fat, liver fat, etc. So you have to first differentiate between what kind of a dyslipidemia you have, check with your family members whether they have it. And I don't think that apart from raised triglycerides and VLDL cholesterol, it is related to diet. So lipid intake doesn't matter if your total cholesterol or LDL cholesterol, non-LDL cholesterol or non-HDL cholesterol is higher. You have to look at all other inflammation and insulin resistance.
Also, we have
I can see that. What is your opinion about milk and dairy products? So the first thing is, if we can accept the adulteration of milk, because that is very common, the estrogens that are given to the cows, and then that's why you can get milk as costly as 600 rupees a liter also. They say that they are stress-free cows and they are not injected any kind of a prolactin or any other hormones. But otherwise, if you, whatever milk you get, the biggest concern people have is lactose intolerance, and which is really less common in India, because we know that around 2 years of age, the lactate is diminished. And if you keep on drinking milk, they are reintroduced in the GIT. So the lactose intolerance is not a big problem, but after it goes with the fashion, that gluten intolerance and lactose intolerance. And that's why people stop drinking milk and milk products. But I feel that it is not milk, but milk products, especially in the form of sweets and confectionaries. You stop because of the fear of lactose, and then you can get benefits. But otherwise, I feel milk with ghee, milk with high curcumin turmeric will be an excellent addition to our diet. And as you know that in US, there is now a big rage of drinking something called as a turmeric latte.
Okay. That's to make it a passion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a question about what should be done to reduce your inflammation. So inflammation is stress of the body. So I usually call it stressflammation. That is mind and body connected together. So inflammation and stress are together. So first thing is we need to reduce our fight and flight response to so many things that we generate. So that's where the yoga and stimulating the parasympathetic system, which really works. Then usually we need some inflammation, and to restrict the small or micro injuries that occur inside our body because of rheological factors and because of mechanical factors, and to promote that inflammation, we have a lot of spices in our food. And the spices which were very useful, now we have started using spices so much that they can trigger inflammation also. And black pepper is one of the such a common thing. So reducing spice intake to certain level, reducing stress, following yoga, and typically reducing your becoming self-aware of fight and flight response that we generate to so many interactions. And then the substances like long chain omega-3 fatty acids, the vitamin E, vitamin C, which are the extracellular antioxidants, glutathione like intracellular antioxidant, coenzyme 10. But these are the substances which are present in food also. So if you have got acute inflammation or the high levels of inflammatory markers are present, then I will recommend taking these substances. But otherwise, going back to this natural thing, and the best thing is 7 hours of sleep between sunset and sunrise. That is the most important thing, a peaceful sleep between sunset and sunrise. That is very important to reduce inflammation. Because people sleep at 2 o'clock, the sun rises at 6 o'clock, they get up at 9 o'clock. So it is practically post sunrise sleep is also inflammatory.
Excellent. So we have Dr. Ambekar in the audience and Dr. Nivrutti Hase. So I would like to ask, sir, when we deal with various medical conditions, and how does this work, the diet and nutrition planning, and any other inputs you have? So both of you, I would request, please share your insights and inputs.
Diet and health is definitely important. Mind and health is also important. The balance of diet, health, and mind is required for prevention of diseases. And as this was a very good, inspiring lecture by Dr. Nitin. So we should set a goal, as you say, from today only, to control our diet, mind, and health. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ambekar, sir, are you there?
He's left.
He's left. Okay. So any audience, anybody wants to share a feedback?
Yeah, that is more important.
That's very important. Dr. Kaveri, Dr. Arundhati, any feedback on the session?
This is Arundhati.
Hi, Arundhati.
Hi. Dr. Patankar is excellent. Really very informative. And thank you very much. I just have a personal experience. Like you said, implementation is a problem. 3 years ago, I lost 13 kg. And I could sustain it for about a year and a half. And I could go off my diabetic medications totally. And reduce my antihypertensives too. And like you said, the implementation is such a problem that it was not sustainable. And I'm back to where I was 3 years ago. So the sustainability, I think, is really important. And I think your talk has really helped a lot.
Can I comment on this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So usually we say that whenever you achieve your goal, then beware of a number 1/3 of what you have achieved. If you surpass that, suppose you lose 15 kg weight, then you can take it lightly till you are playing in the zone of 5 kgs. The moment it exceeds 5 kg, that is the spiraling point where you come back very quickly to the original state. So that is the time when you really need help. I don't mean help means self-help, or you talk to someone, and that's where the community or the group therapy works.
True, true,
And
true.
we have an excellent group here. So I will like any assistance or any discussion you need, but I really feel that you should start it again because you have done it once. You have been there, so you can do it again. And this time
I
you
have
can
started
extend
it.
to 5 years. Yeah.
Your talk has been very motivating, and I have started it. I hope to sustain it again. Let us see.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping for the best. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alpa and team.
Yes. So Dr. Nitin, one question. Do you do some curriculum or a course like this, kind of a structured course? Do you do it for doctors or non-medical where you...
Yeah, I have done basically a course for even gynecologist, and I do regular courses for doctors on the chakra therapy, sound and chakra meditation. And for the same work, I have come to Pune today.
Okay. So
Yeah.
maybe I think all group can come together, create a big energy and force
Yeah,
Dr.
absolutely.
Nitin Patankar to conduct a complete workshop for us.
No, like Alpa, you are the big,
Indeed.
big name in this, and you are a big motivator. So you take a leadership, we will work for you.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Nitin,
Yes, madam.
hello, this is
Hello.
Kaveri. Very nice talk.
Thank you.
And as everybody said, it is a sustainability and continuously following it is a real issue. It is like I found it now. I have also got into a program of doing it. It is like a meditation, and in that program, I am continuously the whole day. I get reminders from my coaches, diet coach, my exercise coach, and they keep motivating, and the messages keep coming in that app. And also doctor's advice is also that then continuous consultation goes on, and these reminders really help. And it's like a meditation all the time. I'm only every hour watching what I'm eating at this time, and they keep reminding you to have water every 1 hour, at least 11 glasses in a day. So 24 hours my concentration is on drinking water, eating the right amount of the food as it's been prescribed, and the proportion and the timings, chasing the timings and catching up with the timings. Of course, it is helping me, but it is really, I like children, we need somebody to, like motivation is all right in one lecture or two lecture, but continuously if you are in a program, I feel somebody is sort of looking at you from the behind and continuously reminding it. That also helps. I think many of these programs are there where the diet coaches are directly involving and guiding the patients. Because otherwise, after 1 day or 2 days, I may not remember to drink water as much, or eat at the right time, or be careful about the proportions and the gaps in between. And
Again, madam, can I make a comment on this?
Yeah, please.
Usually, if you do it for somebody else, where somebody is looking to you to get motivation, then you will do it better. Because usually it happens that I quit smoking with my heart attack, then I start smoking again. But if my son starts smoking, then I will quit it permanently and set an example for him. So it may not be your life, but if you can become a role model for someone else.
Yeah, but then first you have to achieve your goal, then only you become a role model. Initially, you have to work, but the workout has to be first start from yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank
Very
you.
nice. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Nitin, so much. It was a fantastic talk and a fantastic experience. So all of you, thank you for joining and participating so actively and enthusiastically. And so we have all our previous talks are also there on Umang YouTube channel. You can also join us on the Facebook and be connected. And again, we'll meet next month, last Saturday of next month. And those of you who are very much motivated can approach Nitin for taking more personal guidance or maybe taking a workshop for us. So thank you all of you, and bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, Nitin.